Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. Austin Clark here, host of the Multiply You podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We have a fantastic guest that I'll introduce here in just a moment, doing some really neat things in the industry. And on top of that, we'll talk about one of the topics that is the very most important to your business, and that is marketing. As Ben and I were talking kind of pre-show, if you will, everyone wants one more call, one more job, one more opportunity to be able to grow their business. And so I'm excited to be able to talk to a pro about that today. As you know, this episode, it's sponsored by my company, Pest Control. And speaking of marketing, we have been very fortunate the last several years to be growing at an astounding rate. And part of the way that we've done that is via acquisition. And so if you specifically live in the Phoenix area, have 3-5+ trucks on the road and a really reputable brand, I would love to talk with you. We've done a handful of these deals. We get a little bit better every single time that we do them. The last one we did was just over a month ago. And this gentleman, he's golfing a little bit more and working a little bit less. He didn't realize that he was really sitting on a gold mine and was surprised to find what we would offer for his company so that he could go on and relax a little bit. And so we want to pay top dollar for any company that's out there. And I'd love to be able to have those conversations. You can reach out to me directly on my cell. You can call or text me or my email. My cell is 480-254-9730. And then my email is aclark@moxiepestcontrol.com. The other plug that I want to put in is for the book that Michael E. Gerber of the E-Myth. He and I, we've co-authored. We spent about the last 2 years co-authoring the vertical E-Myth for the pest control space and the pest control industry. And so speaking of marketing, it is a wonderful tool for any operator out there that's looking to be able to improve their top line, improve their bottom line, and to grow their company. And he and I, we are launching it in Phoenix Thursday, November 3rd. It'll be a great event. There's going to be a lot of people there. Michael's going to keynote it. And if that's something you're interested in, feel free to reach out to me. We are limiting the space and limiting the people that are attending. And so please reach out to me as soon as you either hear this or want to learn more about it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so great to have Ben Harl on today. He, as I read over his bio, it's an understatement to say that he's got experience. He has got a tremendous amount of experience. And one of the things that, as I've looked at taking this exam, first of all, Ben is an ACE, which is an associate certified entomologist. And there's some of you out there that are listening, and I would guess that the percentage of people in the pest control space that are ACEs or associate certified entomologists have got to be less than 0.1%. And that exam and that, it's almost like buying a home, the stack of paperwork that you have to study and how difficult that thing is. It is an inch or two thick. And so just to be able to have that credential is a really, really big deal. On top of that, he's certified through AIB and the MPMA, and for GMP and food safety and food processing. Ben's primary focus in his current role is the implementation of digital training and media marketing. And you'll have to help me with the pronunciation of the company. Dagish America, is that right?
Yeah, Dagish America.
Dagish.
Yeah.
Dagish America Inc. and their partners. And so, Ben, it's so good to have you on the show. Thank you for carving out some of your time to speak with me and my audience. How are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, happy to have you on. And so let's start with a little bit of the backstory. What is it that's been part of your path that has kind of prepared you for your role at where you are now? What's a little bit of the history?
As most people in the pest control industry, if you would have asked me 20 years ago if I was going to be in the pest control industry, I probably would have laughed at you. I think we have a lot of people like that in our industry. I started kind of the bottom rung of the ladder. I started with a national pest control company killing cockroaches in restaurants in the middle of the night,
Yep.
and worked my way up through that, and got pretty heavily involved in fumigation. I'm a Midwest boy, so corn and soybeans as far as the eye can see. So we do a lot of commercial pest control, a lot of agricultural pest control in my neck of the woods. So I got pretty heavily involved in fumigation, and kind of found a passion with that. And then worked my way into management and then into distribution. And then my current role with Dagish America is as the marketing director. So I've moved away from the service side of the industry, so to speak. I still get out and get my hands dirty. I still like to go out and actually get my hands dirty doing fumigations. But my primary focus is in marketing, but that also is kind of split evenly between marketing and training and education. So as I went through this, this progress in the pest control industry, I became more and more passionate about training and education because I saw that there was a gap in training and education, and that gap's been filled more and more over the last decade or so. But there was a gap, especially early on in my career, where there was a big gap in training and education and preparation for state certifications and things like that. So I kind of took it upon myself to learn as much as I can and then try to create procedures or training modules to help educate people on what we do, basically, and not just internally on from a service perspective, but also train our customers on what we do, because I find the more that the customers know what we do, in my opinion, I think that actually helps us grow business quite a bit, because when they know how to do simple pest identification, when they know what to look for from a sanitation perspective, or maybe structural integrity perspective, they can kind of recognize problems and get a hold of us faster to help them solve those problems. So training and education has really become a critical passion of mine with the industry.
Well, and it's absolutely critical. I was on the other day having a conversation with a gentleman that is as passionate, perhaps, about training as you are. And at Moxie, in my company, we take that really, really seriously. We have formal training every single day, Monday through Friday, for every single one of our employees. We invest 30 minutes of our workday. If you're in the office and you're a customer service representative, we want them to be experts, and we want them to hold licenses, and we want them to know how to be able to identify and to really educate our customers. If you're in the field, we might do trainings on customer service. We might do trainings on this product or that product or this piece of equipment, or some of our values that are important to us. And so, a lot of people, when I talk to them, they're like, we don't have the time to do that. How do you make the time for that? And the way we make the time for that is we just make the time for that. I'm unaware of any other way to provide as much information as quickly that we need to as a company to our people that are the core of our business. They're the ones that are taking care of our customers. They're the ones that are in their homes, on their property, talking to them on the phone. And so it's not training 100 people a day and for 30 minutes a day, and that's a waste, and it costs us $2,000 or $3,000 a day to do that. It is absolutely an investment. And speaking of, Ben, that gap, I've not been in the industry quite as long as you have, but I also think that we were set back in some ways with the pandemic. I think that over the last decade or decade and a half, it improved. And as I've had more conversations with pest control operators and owners, a lot of that went out the window because they weren't coming to the physical space anymore. And so it would be once a week, and it was really just to do a chemical order or pick up some equipment. And I think and hopefully I'm wrong, but I think that we've kind of set ourselves back just a little bit. And, anyway, so talk to us then a little bit, Ben, about, you saw in your experience with what you've done the last decade or so, this gap. How did you identify that gap? Why do you think that was happening in the first place? And then what have you done, and what has some of your career been about to fix that, I guess?
Sure. Okay. I'll do my best. So, I mean, the gap has been closing quite significantly, I think, over the last decade. I've been in this almost 20 years now, to try to date myself, if you can't tell by the gray in my hair. I've been around for a few. But, the first decade or so, there was a pretty big gap. We've been closing that gap quite a bit over the last decade or so. Training and education, especially since the Food Safety Modernization Act got passed, training and education became a lot more important, from an integrated pest management perspective. So that gap has been closing substantially over the last several years. But I mean, recognizing the gap was, just going out into the field with individuals and watching them work. And I mean, admittedly, sometimes you'd see somebody doing something in an incorrect fashion, and you'd ask them, well, who taught you how to do that in that fashion, whether it's, incorrect application or incorrect inspection, whatever the case is. You'd ask him to say, well, I learned it from the guy before me. Well, where did he learn it? He learned it from the guy before him. So there was a lot of hand-me-down training going on, and it was a lot of word-of-mouth stuff. And then also people were doing things in innovative ways also. So it's not just the negative. There were a lot of positive things when I go out in the field and work with individuals. I'd see them doing something that I had never thought about before. And I say, well, where did you learn that? Because that's a genius application method, that still falls in the rules. And they'll say, well, I learned it from the guy before me, and he learned it from the guy before him, and they've just improved it. But nobody was really collecting that information in a way that could be shared broadly with a lot of different individuals. So you'd have this innovation, or in some cases, and then you'd also have these, sometimes incorrect ways of getting things done. But nothing was being collected and shared broadly. And so I just thought, well, there's an opportunity for us to kind of teach people broadly different ways that things could be achieved and accomplished safely, effectively. I mean, our safety being the number one goal. Of course, our first goal is to make sure that we go home safe at the end of every day, and that our customers are safe in their homes or their environments, whatever the case is. And we want to make sure that happens, but we also want to be effective at our jobs too. So that gap, like I said, the gap's been closing over the last several years. And it's interesting that you mentioned the thing with COVID too, because I think that I agree with you that I think that set us back, but I would actually say that I don't know if it set us back as much as it put a spotlight on deficiencies that we had in our industry. And what I mean by that is we didn't have all of our training was done in a physical setting, and it needs to be done in a physical setting. A lot of it does. So I'm not discounting that at all. Field training, physical training absolutely is critical to what we do. But COVID removed that ability, and our industry wasn't set up to be successful with online training, Zoom meetings, online training, automated training, things like that. So we had to hurry up and play catch up to try to get ourselves set up with that. And a perfect example of that is, it's just been in the last couple of years that so many states have accepted the opportunity for us to obtain continuing education hours online through online courses. Before, most of the states wouldn't accept online courses. But because of COVID.
And that is so convenient for pest control operators. And I think that you're right. You said it, Ben, a lot better than I did. I don't know that it set us back, but it exposed those deficiencies. And, I think that there's a lot of companies that have rolled with the punches, and their training is better than ever. And it's more efficient and it's quicker. It doesn't replace hands-on training or in-shop training or in-field training. But it certainly exposed some of those deficiencies and made some of the training even more effective. Are you aware, Ben? I mean, you've worked and consulted and kind of seen so many different pest control companies out there. I mean, when you walk in or when you see companies that have SOPs or standardized operating procedures, and those that don't, or those that do invest in training and those that don't, I mean, what is the difference in those two companies?
I mean, in most cases, it can be fairly vast. I mean, you can always tell the difference between people who have standardized training and people who don't have standardized training. In the cases of the folks that I see when I do any kind of consultation or site visits or field visits these days, most of the time, because of the Food Safety Modernization Act, I mean, people are have been forced to kind of adopt standard operating procedures. And so we see a lot less of people who fly by the seat of their pants, so to speak. Most people actually do have some pretty decent procedures in place now. But yeah, you can definitely tell the difference between people who do and people who do not. People who do train on a regular basis, both field and classroom training, their folks have a leg up. And I am a firm believer in a highly trained individual. I fully believe that a highly trained individual is going to be a lot more successful in not only the service portion of the industry, but they're also going to be a lot more successful in the sales portion of the industry as well, because they can, not only do they know how to walk the walk, but they actually know how to talk the talk as well. And so being able to do both is not only going to make you a better technician, but it's going to make you a better salesperson as well. So you're going to be able to increase your sales, and you're going to be better at your service. And then those go hand in hand, really. You're not going to get increased sales if you're really terrible at what you do, but you could be the best at what you do. And if you don't have the technical know-how, or you don't know how to sell what you do, you could have some deficiencies there as well, and you may not get as many clients.
No, you're absolutely right, and you kind of segued us into the meat and potatoes of this thing, and that integrated pest management, like, that is a thing. It's very important. And I think the first step of that process is to have us be experts and have the education so that we can properly identify. And then once we've done that, we can decide what the best method is to be able to treat. And if we in the field, us guys and gals, can not even articulate that, but communicate that to the customer, that sometimes can translate into additional services or additional subscriptions. And that can boost your top line revenue. As it relates to marketing, people buy from people that they like, from people that they trust, from people that know what they're talking about. I guess you can be successful in really cold, hard selling or calling or marketing or what have you. But I mean, if we have an opportunity time and time again to be in a customer's home and on a customer's property, and we do a good job and we're doing the job that they've hired us to do, we don't have tons of callbacks. They are much more, people don't want to switch. People want to have the same company at their property all the time. They're familiar with the apps. They know how you schedule. They know how you bill. They want to talk to someone that's competent in the office. And so talk to us, and in terms of marketing and how, really what you're doing is you're training people to become competent experts so that they can go and provide services that often turn into additional services. And so maybe speak to us about that for a little bit, Ben.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago, I was introduced to the inbound marketing methodology. And for those of you who don't know what that is, I'll give you kind of my brief description on what it is. But I highly suggest anybody go Google it, look it up. It's a pretty brilliant marketing methodology. And what it is it's achieving increased revenue or increased sales through training and education, which works great for me because my primary passion is training and education. So but the methodology, the way that I use it actually is an educated and a well-trained customer is going to choose you as their service provider or as their product provider more often than not, because you are viewed as the expert by that individual. I've ran into people in the past, not very often, but I've ran into some folks in the past that have told me things like, I don't want to really educate my customer because then what do they need me for? Now they know how to do some of what I do, especially when it comes to like general use things. And that may be true, but with Google these days, I just mentioned earlier, with Google these days, people can look up all kinds of different things. People can go on YouTube.
You can build a house from scratch if you
Exactly.
watch YouTube, not having any construction background at all.
Exactly.
There is no more secrets out there. If you want to go and do something, you can find that out 10 different ways online.
Exactly. And so the information's already there. So all we can do is just kind of show them that we've taken the time and the effort to become experts in our field, or at least as much of an expert as we can. And then, so if they have questions about things, educate them, let them know, explain to them pest identification techniques, how to, sanitation techniques, how to spot structural integrity concerns in their residence or their commercial structure, or whatever the case is. And you'd be surprised at how often and how frequent you're going to get return calls from those customers because you have become the expert. You are the person that they're going to go to. I mean, most of the time, it's in our human nature for us to trust the people who have educated us more than we're going to trust anybody else. So when it's time for those individuals to make the decision for pest control or a service visit or whatever the case is, more often than not, they're going to come to us again because we're the ones that have taught them what to look for. So it's a really excellent technique. Now, me personally, the first and foremost is the training and education part of it, because that's the thing that I'm passionate about. And for me, it's the added benefit that we get a lot of sales from that type of technique, the inbound methodology. So it works absolutely great.
And so so I hear you, from a 10,000 foot overview, we start with training, we start with becoming experts, and we start with becoming competent. What are some of the other steps along that journey? I mean, what does that look like? Is there a process for that? Or, you show up, you're equipped, you're trained, you have everything. Do you take it even further as far as converting leads? Someone that called in for something, you take care of that and 2 or 3 other problems that they had that they never even knew that they had, or what does the rest of that look like?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, some of the other things that we do is, information is king these days. So any information that you can gather. So we do training and education with our customers. And then they will opt to choose, to buy our products or buy our service, whatever the case is. And that builds information for us. And then we can input that information into a CRM, customer relationship management, process. And what we found is, the more that we collect that data and automate that data, the more that we can find out other things that customer may be interested in. So if you have for example, if you have a customer that gets a service for ants in May, I'm making this up, of course, let's say they get a service for ants in May. If you input that information into the CRM, next May, your CRM is going to flag you and tell you that customer purchased an ant treatment in May, and it's going to prompt you to revisit that customer and ask them if they need another treatment. Or if you input information that you found structural integrity issues in their property, or you found sanitation issues in their property, all of this can lead to add-on sales depending on what kind of sales you provide, whether it's product sales, service sales, things like that. You may find some structural integrity issues where you can offer, if you have construction as part of your service platform, you can offer to do some minor construction repairs for pest exclusion. You can offer cleaning services if your service platform also contains like cleaning things. I've even worked with companies that do snow removal, landscaping, lawn care, things like that. And all of that just kind of blends together. And the interesting thing is what we found is, like if we have service techs that go out and provide a service for an ant call, let's use that as an example again, and they notice that this particular facility has, weed growth really high on their back property. What a great way to go and not tell them, hey, we can also, take care of your weed problem, but educate them on that. Hey, did you know that these weeds can actually harbor this pest, that pest? And did you also know that it also creates a harboring area for rodents? And again, I'm making all this up. I'm just using this as an example. So you educate them on that. You let them know what kind of problems could arise from whatever situation you're finding. And then when it's time for them to decide whether or not they want to take an action on that, of course, they're going to get a hold of you first because you're the one that initially educated them on the potential risk for that issue in the first place.
Well, and it's what I love, Ben, about the home service space, because it really is all, and my niche is pest control, but it really is all interconnected. And I would love for everybody to just think and consider. So when you take your vehicle in for an oil change, they're certainly going to do that for you, but they have a 10-point or 15-point or 20-point inspection. They're checking a lot of fluid. They're checking your tires. There's a lot of things that they're doing. First and foremost, I believe, because they're wanting you to be safe on the road. But secondly, if there's more goods and services that they can offer you to keep you safe and to boost revenue, then that's a really, really good thing. And so if you're out there and you have a company and you don't have an inspection process, I'd really encourage you to have one. The very first thing, it's actually not even the very first thing, it's probably like the third thing that we do when we actually get on with the physical service. We don't do any physical service at all. We start with an exterior home inspection. And so we have no equipment in our hands. We have no product in our hands. All we're doing is taking the first 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, minutes, walking the property, looking at the foundation of the home, looking in the yard, seeking out the source, really getting serious about integrated pest management. Because then once we've done that, we're equipped with, okay, there's an ant hill here. They're odorous ants, not Argentine ants. Or, hey, they've got some foundational issues here. I don't know if they've got termites or if they've had termites already, but that's a really good axe. Hey, they've got a lot of excessive moisture here from a runoff from an air conditioning unit. And so it allows us to be able to provide a better service. It also gives us talking pieces to have with the customer. And I love the example, Ben, that you used about the weeds in the backyard. It's like, hey, not only are they unsightly, which no one likes, but they are a breeding ground for a variety of different pests. And so, we would love to obviously educate you and say, hey, one of the reasons you're having all of these scorpions in Arizona or ants or whatever is because the backyard looks like a jungle. And so if that's something that you can take care of or we can take care of, it's a service that we offer. We'd love to be able to do that. It'll clean things up, make it look good, and it'll also reduce the pest pressure that you're having in the back that you called us out here for in the first place. And so it's a longer term fix. And I think that, you talk to people in that way and they're very appreciative most of the time. And like you said, if you're conducting yourself and behaving in a professional way, then they're definitely going to take you up on that. So, well, very good. No, I think that this has been remarkable. And, I think that you probably in your mind have a case study too, Ben, of companies that are implementing this type of program, not just with training, but that have kind of a roadmap, that have talking pieces. And I would imagine that those companies that do have a much higher top line revenue, they're probably growing at a much faster rate. And I also love the fact that you talk about making those notes in your CRM. Hey, they called in May for ants. They'll probably call again the next May. Maybe we call them in April to say, hey, this time last year, you called us for ants. I think that if we got a jump start on it, it would even be less of a problem. But let's go ahead and take care of that for you. These are our promotions. Mm-hmm. So anyway, what are some of the things, Ben, that have been helpful for you in your journey as it relates to education? I mean, are there books that you lean on or people that you listen to online? I mean, what has kind of helped some of your methodology for this inbound marketing?
Sure. Well, there's been a few. I mean, first and foremost, I've had some absolutely wonderful mentors in my career in pest control. I mean, the list is long, but I've had the very, very fortunate opportunity to work with mentors that view training and education and customer service being paramount for our industry. And our industry is full of people like that. It's rare in industries these days, but the pest control industry is full of a lot of people who really, really care about what they do. And I don't think the general public is necessarily as aware of that as maybe they should be. But so I've been very, very fortunate to work with some wonderful people that I've learned from. The inbound methodology, I've also was fortunate to go to a conference that they have in Boston every year, a few years back. And so I was able to learn a lot from that. I'm an avid reader, so I read a lot about industry change. I read a book by Beth Comstock, actually, who I met at the Inbound conference that I went to. That was
very cool.
Worked for GE. She's an agent of change. It was a very, very wonderful book talking about trying to take old methodologies and change into more of a modern technique when it comes to not just service and sales, but just an overall view of how difficult it is to change and how to change people's mentality. Very, very interesting. I also read a book called Lincoln on Leadership. I don't remember who the author was, but it was a very, very wonderful book, just teaching leadership techniques. And then from an industry perspective, of course, you have your Malice Handbook, the Truman Book, the NPMA, the National Pest Management Association, is they have so many resources available through that agency. both online and in person. If you ever get an opportunity to speak with people that work at the MPMA or visit some of their resources, it's a very, very invaluable for people who are interested in training and education in our industry. So I'd say that those are probably the most used educational tools that I've had in my career.
Very good. Ben, thank you so much for your time. It's valuable, it's limited, and you've carved some of it out to be able to spend with me and my audience. I certainly want to give you the last word for people that are either on the fence, that haven't made that leap of faith, I guess you could say, of more regular training, or any just nuggets of wisdom that you'd like to leave. What would you say to them?
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I love it. And then if people need to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that? Do they find you on LinkedIn? Do they go to your site? What's the best way if people want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name's Ben Harl, so you can just search for me on LinkedIn. I work for a company called Dagish America. We primarily work with fumigations, both service and fumigation products. But I'd be happy to talk to anybody about any facet of pest control. So feel free to reach out to me there. Our website is dagishamerica.com. I'm also in charge of our info emails. So if you send out to info@dagishamerica.com, it's going to go directly to my inbox. So if you need to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me through that.
For that large of a company, I cannot imagine what that info at
it's a
looks
lot.
Like you probably spend 18 hours a day, replying to people and handling business.
Yeah, it's a lot. I like it though. Enjoy it.
Well, very good. Ben, again, thank you so much for being on, and thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. We're dropping these every Thursday, and so there's going to be more great content. And until then, and until the next time, create a great day. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.